At the party, my wife declared we were in an open relationship. I nodded and said, "As you wish." Then I turned to her stunning friend and asked her out on the spot. What happened next silenced the entire room. I had been genuinely enjoying myself at this upscale Tampa art gallery opening, surrounded by the kind of sophisticated crowd that Rachel and I usually thrived among. The evening had started perfectly. I was engaged in a fascinating conversation about vintage motorcycle restoration with a fellow mechanical engineer, discussing the intricacies of rebuilding classic Triumph Bonneville engines and the craftsmanship required to restore their original chrome and leather details. Around us, 40 or so guests moved through the space with practiced gallery etiquette, examining contemporary sculptures and abstract paintings while maintaining the kind of intellectual discourse that made these events genuinely enriching rather than mere social obligations. Artists debated technique and vision. Collectors discussed market trends and investment potential, while gallery owners networked with the easy confidence of people who understood both art and business. The atmosphere felt comfortable and familiar, exactly the kind of environment where Rachel and I had always connected over shared interests and mutual respect for creativity and culture. That's when Rachel suddenly tapped her champagne glass with calculated precision, the sharp crystalline sound cutting through every conversation in the space. I noticed immediately that this was her third glass of Prosecco, and something about her posture and expression suggested an artificial confidence I'd never witnessed before. The 40 or so guests, artists, collectors, gallery owners, and creative professionals, gradually turned toward her as she positioned herself deliberately near a striking abstract piece, using the artwork as a dramatic backdrop for whatever announcement she was planning. "I have something important to share with everyone," she declared with theatrical flair, her voice projecting across the entire gallery with practiced authority. "David and I have made an exciting decision to explore polyamory and open our marriage to new experiences, connections, and possibilities." The sophisticated murmur of conversation died instantly, replaced by the kind of stunned silence that follows completely unexpected confessions at formal social gatherings. Every pair of eyes in that gallery shifted to me with obvious anticipation, clearly expecting me to either storm out in humiliated rage, publicly beg her to reconsider this devastating revelation, or create some kind of dramatic scene that would give them something to gossip about for months. Instead, I calmly set down my wine glass on the nearest display table, took a measured breath to collect my thoughts, and turned with complete composure to Rachel's breathtaking colleague Natalie, who had been quietly sketching in the corner while observing the unfolding social drama with a kind of artistic curiosity that suggested she understood human nature better than most. "Natalie," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the completely silent room with steady confidence, "would you like to join me at the downtown food and wine festival this weekend? I think you'd really enjoy the artisanal cheese vendors and local wine selections." She looked up from her intricate sketchpad, her intelligent eyes meeting mine with what appeared to be both genuine surprise and obvious appreciation for the unexpected invitation, then responded with a knowing smile that seemed to illuminate the entire gallery space. "I'd absolutely love to, David, especially since I believe in treating remarkable people with the genuine respect and appreciation they truly deserve." The sophisticated gallery crowd erupted into shocked murmurs and barely suppressed gasps as Natalie gracefully accepted my invitation while delivering her pointed comment about respect and appreciation that clearly referenced Rachel's behavior. I watched Rachel's smug expression transform instantly from theatrical confidence into genuine panic as she realized her calculated power move had spectacularly imploded, with her own talented friend now publicly suggesting she could value me properly where Rachel obviously hadn't. The transformation on Rachel's face was absolutely fascinating to observe, the way her eyes widened with dawning horror as she comprehended that her manipulation had backfired completely, creating exactly the opposite result she'd intended. The gallery owner, a distinguished woman in her 50s who had probably witnessed countless social dramas at these cultural events over the years, nervously adjusted the track lighting above us while stealing glances at our little tableau, clearly trying to determine whether she should intervene or simply let this unexpected performance art continue to its natural conclusion. Other guests suddenly became intensely fascinated by the abstract paintings on the walls, studying brushstrokes and color theory with exaggerated interest, though several struggled unsuccessfully to hide their obvious amusement at this unexpected social theater unfolding before them in real time. I could see couples exchanging meaningful looks, artists whispering observations about human nature and social dynamics, while the more seasoned gallery patrons positioned themselves strategically to observe the continuing drama without appearing to stare directly. "This is just a conversation starter." Rachel desperately tried to laugh it off, her voice rising with barely controlled hysteria as she attempted damage control that was clearly failing. "It's like performance art, you know, a social experiment designed to provoke intellectual discussion among our creative community about relationships and modern social conventions." But her explanation sounded hollow and desperate even to her own ears, especially when delivered to a room full of actual artists who understood the fundamental difference between genuine creative expression and manipulative attention-seeking behavior designed to control and humiliate someone publicly. The forced laughter that accompanied her words came out as more of a nervous giggle, and I could see her hands trembling slightly as she gestured, betraying the panic she was trying so hard to conceal behind her artificial composure. I politely turned back to her with the same calm composure I'd maintained throughout this entire surreal evening and said with perfect clarity, "No, Rachel, I'm simply embracing the lifestyle choice you just announced to everyone present. You said we're exploring polyamory and new connections, so I'm exploring a connection with someone who clearly appreciates intellectual conversation and demonstrates genuine mutual respect." The room remained completely silent except for the soft ambient jazz playing through the gallery's sound system, creating an almost cinematic quality to the moment as everyone processed what was actually happening and realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Natalie gracefully gathered her art supplies with practiced efficiency, her movements displaying the kind of natural elegance that comes from years of confidence and self-possession. Her sketchpad revealed intricate drawings of the gallery's architecture and the people within it, demonstrating the kind of keen observational skills that suggested she'd been documenting human behavior and social interactions long before tonight's unexpected drama provided such rich material for artistic study. "I'll send you my contact information," she told me with genuine warmth and what appeared to be sincere enthusiasm, then turned to address the gallery owner with professional courtesy that demonstrated her class and social awareness. "Thank you for hosting such an unforgettable evening. The artwork is truly exceptional, and the company has been absolutely fascinating from an anthropological perspective." Her graceful exit strategy left Rachel frozen in complete mortification as she realized that her attempt to publicly humiliate and control me had instead resulted in her losing face in front of her entire professional and social circle while I maintained perfect dignity throughout the entire ordeal, emerging as the sympathetic figure in this unexpected social drama. Outside in the gallery's moonlit parking lot beside Tampa Bay, with the gentle sound of water lapping against the nearby marina and the distant glow of downtown lights reflecting off the water, Rachel frantically insisted that her announcement was merely an avant-garde conversation starter designed to provoke intellectual discussion among our creative circle. "You're being completely ridiculous," she hissed, her voice sharp with desperation as she followed me toward my car while struggling to maintain her balance in the designer heels she'd insisted on wearing despite knowing we'd be walking on gravel. "That wasn't a real announcement, David. It was social commentary, an artistic statement about the rigid conventions that trap modern relationships in outdated paradigms." I stopped walking and turned to face her directly, studying her face in the soft illumination from the vintage street lamps that lined the waterfront area. "Really? Because it sounded remarkably specific when you mentioned exploring new connections and experiences. Those weren't abstract concepts, Rachel. Those were concrete plans." Her carefully applied makeup was beginning to show stress fractures, mascara slightly smudged from the humidity and her obvious emotional turmoil as she realized her manipulation tactics weren't working the way they always had before. I systematically dismantled her excuses with the same methodical approach I used for solving complex engineering problems, revealing that I'd been aware of her suspicious late-night, collaborative sessions with Marcus from the sculpture studio for weeks. "Those Thursday evening creative workshops that run until midnight," I continued calmly, "the weekend artist retreats where you forget to answer your phone for entire days, the sudden need for private studio space when you've always worked from home before. Her panicked protests became increasingly frantic as I calmly outlined the pattern of deception that had been building for months, each excuse becoming more desperate and less convincing as she realized I'd been paying far more attention than she'd assumed. "Marcus and I are just friends," she stammered, but her voice lacked any conviction, and we both knew she was grasping at explanations that wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. "We collaborate on conceptual pieces that require intensive brainstorming sessions and creative exploration." I explained with perfect composure that polyamorous relationships require mutual consent and equal participation from all parties involved, not unilateral declarations that benefit only one partner's hidden agenda while leaving the other person completely blindsided and humiliated in public. "The thing about open relationships," I said while fishing my car keys from my pocket, "is that they work both ways. You can't announce that we're exploring new connections and then get upset when I immediately explore one with someone who actually appreciates intellectual conversation and demonstrates basic respect." When she realized I was genuinely serious about the food festival plans with Natalie, Rachel's sophisticated facade completely crumbled into desperate threats and wild accusations that revealed her true character beneath the artistic pretensions. "You can't actually go through with this," she demanded, her voice rising to a pitch that probably carried across the entire parking area. "I forbid it. This isn't what I meant when I made that announcement." The confrontation intensified dramatically when she threatened to contact Natalie directly and demand she withdraw her acceptance of my invitation, prompting me to remind her that Natalie was a successful independent artist who made her own relationship decisions based on her own judgment and values, unlike the controlling dynamic Rachel had spent years establishing in our marriage where every social interaction required her approval and oversight. Throughout the following week, Rachel cycled between tearful manipulation attempts and explosive anger, exposing the full extent of her narcissistic control strategies as she tried every psychological tactic in her arsenal to regain dominance over the situation that had spiraled completely beyond her control. I watched with fascination as she deployed techniques I'd never consciously recognized before but now understood had been constant features of our relationship dynamics for years. "You're destroying everything we've built together," she sobbed dramatically during one particularly theatrical breakdown in our Tampa condo's living room, complete with carefully positioned tissues and strategic positioning near the window where the afternoon light would highlight her tears most effectively. But her performance felt hollow now that I understood the calculated nature behind her emotional displays, and I found myself analyzing her behavior with the same objective detachment I'd used to evaluate a flawed engineering design. I learned through our mutual friend Jennifer that Marcus had actually declined Rachel's romantic advances several weeks prior, explaining the precise timing of her public announcement as a desperate face-saving maneuver and power grab designed to maintain her image while punishing me for her rejection and humiliation. "She's been telling everyone that you're having a midlife crisis," Jennifer confided during a coffee meeting downtown, her expression revealing obvious discomfort with being caught in the middle of our marital drama. "But honestly, David, most of us could see what was happening with Marcus. She wasn't exactly subtle about pursuing him, and when he turned her down, she seemed genuinely shocked that someone would reject her advances." This revelation reframed everything about Rachel's behavior over the past month, from her sudden interest in sculpture techniques to her mysterious absences and defensive attitudes whenever I asked about her activities or emotional state. During one particularly volatile argument in our condo, Rachel accidentally revealed that she had planned to use the open relationship label as justification for pursuing multiple men while expecting me to remain monogamously devoted and emotionally available for her needs whenever she required validation or support. "That's what open means," she screamed, her mask of sophisticated composure completely shattered as she paced frantically around our living room like a caged animal. "I get to explore my options and discover what's out there, while you provide stability and security. That's how these arrangements work for successful couples." Her accidentally honest outburst revealed the fundamental selfishness underlying her entire worldview, the assumption that relationships existed primarily to serve her needs and desires while other people functioned as supporting characters in her personal narrative of self-discovery and validation. Her carefully constructed mask completely disintegrated when she demanded I cancel the food festival plans immediately, screaming that I was supposed to fight for their relationship, rather than actually exercising the freedoms she had publicly granted me in front of our entire social circle. Real husbands don't just accept this kind of thing, she raged, throwing decorative pillows across the room with increasing violence. They're supposed to get jealous and possessive and prove how much they love their wives by refusing to let other men have access to them. I had a profound realization that 8 years of subtle criticism, public corrections, social undermining, and emotional manipulation had all been orchestrated to reach this moment of ultimate control, which had now catastrophically backfired on her in the most spectacular way possible, leaving her exposed and vulnerable in ways she'd never experienced before in our relationship. After Rachel attempted to poison our social circle against me by calling mutual friends to portray me as mentally unstable and emotionally abusive, and even contacted my engineering colleagues to suggest I was having a breakdown that might affect my professional competence, I made the life-changing decision to consult a family law attorney in downtown Tampa's financial district. The irony wasn't lost on me that Rachel's desperate attempts to control the narrative had actually provided me with documentation of her manipulative behavior patterns, since several friends had recorded her increasingly unhinged phone calls and forwarded them to me with expressions of genuine concern for my well-being. She called me at midnight crying about how you've become a completely different person, my colleague Jim told me during lunch, shaking his head in disbelief. When I suggested she might want to consider couples therapy, she started screaming that I was taking your side and threatened to report me to HR for workplace harassment. It was absolutely bizarre behavior from someone I've known for years. The attorney, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in high-conflict divorces, reviewed my documentation with professional interest and informed me that Rachel's public announcement at the gallery, combined with her subsequent behavior, had essentially provided ironclad grounds for divorce proceedings that would be difficult for her to contest. The devastating news that I'd already initiated divorce proceedings sent Rachel into complete psychological meltdown when my attorney served her with papers at her art studio, as she suddenly comprehended that her manipulative power play had destroyed everything she actually wanted to preserve while giving me legal justification to escape our toxic dynamic completely. "You can't be serious about this," she screamed into her phone when she called me from the studio, her voice so loud that even my coworkers could hear her hysterical rants through my office door. "This is just your way of trying to control me and punish me for being honest about our relationship needs. You're using the legal system to manipulate me into submission." The projection in her accusations was absolutely stunning. She genuinely seemed to believe that my logical response to her public humiliation constituted manipulation, while her years of systematic psychological control had been normal relationship behavior that I should have gracefully accepted without complaint. She staged one final desperate manipulation by appearing at my engineering firm's downtown office with crocodile tears and promises of intensive couples therapy, creating a scene in our professional lobby that required security intervention and left my colleagues staring in shock at the woman they'd known as my sophisticated, artistic wife. "I'll do anything to save our marriage," she sobbed loudly enough for the entire reception area to hear, clutching a pamphlet for some expensive retreat center she'd obviously grabbed from the internet minutes before arriving. I realize now that I made terrible mistakes, and I'm willing to commit to whatever therapeutic process you think we need to rebuild our trust and communication. But I had already emotionally disconnected from our toxic dynamic completely, recognizing that her promises were just another manipulation tactic designed to regain control rather than genuine remorse for the damage she'd caused to our relationship and my reputation. Their mutual friends began reaching out privately to express profound relief that I'd finally taken action, confessing they'd witnessed years of Rachel's condescending treatment and public humiliation tactics but hadn't known how to intervene without creating social drama or taking sides in what they'd assumed was private marital conflict. "We've been worried about you for a long time," Jennifer admitted during another coffee meeting, her relief obvious as she finally felt free to speak honestly. "Rachel has this way of making you feel small in public, always correcting you or dismissing your opinions with that little laugh she does. We could see it wearing you down, but she's so charming that calling her out seemed impossible." Even Rachel's own mother called to apologize for not addressing the obvious problems earlier, admitting that the entire family had been hoping I would eventually find the courage to stand up for myself and escape the relationship that had clearly become psychologically damaging for everyone involved. The divorce proceedings advanced rapidly due to our prenuptial agreement and absence of children, with Rachel's vindictive legal strategies backfiring spectacularly when her own documented behavior became the central focus of mediation sessions that revealed the extent of her psychological manipulation tactics. Her attorney, clearly uncomfortable with defending Rachel's actions, advised her multiple times to accept the generous settlement terms I'd offered rather than pursuing a contested divorce that would only expose more of her problematic behavior to legal scrutiny. Your client's public announcement of polyamory, combined with the documented harassment of witnesses and attempts to damage your husband's professional reputation, makes this case extremely difficult to defend, I overheard her lawyer explaining during a break in proceedings, his exasperation obvious as Rachel continued insisting that she was the victim in our marital breakdown. Meanwhile, I attended the Food and Wine Festival with Natalie as planned, and our day together revealed effortless compatibility and genuine mutual respect that starkly highlighted everything that had been absent from my marriage to Rachel for years. Natalie's approach to conversation was refreshingly collaborative rather than competitive. She asked thoughtful questions about engineering principles, shared fascinating insights about jewelry design techniques, and demonstrated the kind of intellectual curiosity that made every topic engaging rather than a performance opportunity. "I have to admit," she said while we sampled artisanal cheeses from a local farm, "I was impressed by how you handled that situation at the gallery. Most people would have either exploded or completely shut down, but you managed to maintain your dignity while making your point perfectly clear." We discussed art, travel, career ambitions, and life philosophies with the kind of easy flow that indicated genuine compatibility rather than forced chemistry, and I realized how exhausting it had been to constantly monitor my words and opinions for potential criticism or correction. While Natalie clearly established that she wasn't interested in becoming a rebound relationship or getting involved in my divorce drama, we cultivated an authentic friendship founded on honesty and shared creative interests rather than manipulation and psychological control games that had defined my interactions with Rachel. "I think you need time to process what you've been through," she said wisely as we walked along the Tampa waterfront after the festival. "But I hope we can stay friends regardless of what happens with your personal situation. You're genuinely interesting to talk with, and that's rarer than you might think." 8 months after the gallery opening incident, I encountered several attendees from that evening at various social events around Tampa, and they mentioned they weren't surprised by the divorce outcome and expressed sincere admiration for my dignified handling of the situation that had become legendary in our creative community. "People still talk about that night," an artist named Robert told me at another gallery opening, grinning with obvious appreciation. "The way you turned her power play against her was absolutely brilliant. Most of us were just standing there with our mouths open, but you somehow managed to come out looking like the hero in a situation designed to humiliate you." My former mother-in-law even reached out personally to apologize for her daughter's destructive behavior and expressed genuine hope that I would discover true happiness with someone who recognized and appreciated my character rather than trying to systematically undermine my confidence and self-worth the way Rachel had done throughout our marriage. 18 months later, I attended another art gallery opening at the same Tampa venue where my transformation had begun, but this time I was genuinely relaxed and engaging in meaningful conversations without constantly monitoring my words for potential criticism or preparing defensive responses to anticipated attacks on my character or intelligence. The difference in my mental state was remarkable. I could actually focus on the artwork, enjoy the wine, and participate in discussions about contemporary sculpture techniques without the underlying anxiety that had characterized my social interactions during my marriage to Rachel. Natalie was there with her new partner, a fellow artist from the local creative community named Michael who worked in mixed media installations, and they all shared warm conversation that demonstrated the healthy boundaries and mutual respect I had learned to expect and demand in all my relationships going forward. "David's become quite the regular at these events," Natalie told Michael with genuine affection, "and he actually knows more about art history than most of the people who claim to be collectors. It's refreshing to meet someone who asks intelligent questions instead of just trying to impress everyone with their supposed expertise." I found myself genuinely happy for Natalie's relationship success, appreciating that she'd found someone who shared her creative passions while treating her as an equal partner rather than a trophy or validation source, and their dynamic served as a positive example of what healthy romantic partnerships could actually look like when built on mutual respect and shared interests. When someone casually mentioned Rachel's recent relocation to Portland for what they described as a supposedly fresh artistic start and new creative opportunities, I realized with some surprise that I felt complete indifference toward my former wife's life choices and personal struggles in rebuilding her reputation after the social fallout from our divorce. I heard she's trying to rebrand herself as a relationship counselor, Jennifer mentioned with obvious irony during our conversation, specializing in helping couples navigate unconventional arrangements and alternative relationship structures. Apparently, she's using our divorce as a case study in her workshops about communication breakdown and the importance of mutual consent in polyamorous relationships. The absurdity of Rachel positioning herself as an expert in healthy relationship dynamics after her spectacular failure in our marriage was both amusing and deeply satisfying, suggesting that she still hadn't developed any genuine self-awareness about her manipulative behavior patterns or the damage she'd caused through her narcissistic control strategies. I was currently dating a fellow engineer named Lisa who treated me as an equal partner and collaborator rather than a target for manipulation and control, someone who genuinely appreciated my analytical mind and methodical approach to problem-solving instead of viewing these traits as boring or limiting character flaws that needed to be corrected or overcome. "I love how you think through problems," Lisa had told me during one of our early dates, "the way you consider all the variables and potential outcomes before making decisions. It makes me feel secure knowing that you actually think about consequences instead of just acting impulsively and hoping everything works out somehow." Our relationship was built on genuine compatibility and shared values rather than physical attraction and social status considerations, and I had learned to value partnerships that built me up rather than systematically tearing me down through constant criticism and public humiliation designed to maintain psychological control. Reflecting on that pivotal gallery evening 18 months earlier, I recognized that Rachel's attempt to publicly humiliate and control me had actually liberated me from a psychologically abusive relationship that was slowly destroying my self-confidence and mental health, and I genuinely wouldn't alter a single detail of how events had unfolded because they ultimately led me to discover my own worth and establish healthy relationship standards that protected my emotional well-being going forward.